Boston chapter's tight-lipped team.
Woo!
We have a booth out front, so if you haven't stopped by, definitely do that on your way out. And if you haven't heard of Tight-Lipped is a grassroots advocacy organization that's patient-led, and we advocate for vulvovaginal and pelvic pain conditions. So yeah, that's I'm a member, and Bonnie is as well. And I will get us started introducing our panelists. So we have Cait down at the end. Kathy is a board-certified family nurse practitioner and founder of Pelvic Health Support. She specializes in sexual, pelvic, and hormone health, and her work centers on helping patients get real answers for symptoms that are too often minimized, normalized, or left untreated. We have Dr. Cait Van Damm, a chronic pain coach, pelvic floor occupational therapist, and the founder of the Embodied Resilience Pain Recovery Method. She is the author of Adventures in Vaginas and Other Parts, a Substack dedicated to making pelvic health education accessible and shame-free for everyone. Dr. Alicia Jeffrey Thomas has been a pelvic floor physical therapist for over 10 years. She currently works at Wellist Integrative Health in Back Bay and reaches millions of people on social media through her work as at the Pelvic Dance Floor.
Yeah.
She destigmatizes pelvic floor topics through humorous and educational content on her channel. And her first book, Power to the Pelvis, is a DIY guide to the pelvic floor that further strives to increase awareness and encourage people to seek treatment. And then we have Bonnie Gross, the writer and executive producer of Lady Parts. Bonnie wrote this based on her own true story. She's an award-winning comedy writer, producer, and post-production pro. She co-owns Brain Womb, a boutique finishing house in NYC, where she partners with filmmakers to shape their stories at every stage of the post-production process. Bonnie is also a patient advocate with Tight-Lipped, and she is the leader of the New York chapter. All right, so we're gonna ask some questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So the first question is for Bonnie. This was, a very personal and vulnerable story. Why did you choose to make it into a film?
Yeah, no, it's okay. I keep forgetting we only have one mic. I'm sorry. No, thank you for the intro, and thank you all for being here. I guess for me, I really deal with trauma and stuff through humor, and that's just how I process things. And I didn't want to go to med school, so this was the next best thing I could think of doing. But going through this, it's based on my true life story. I got a vestibulectomy in 2016, and I spent years and years getting medically gaslit and being told and it was just the most isolating experience in the world. I didn't know anybody else going through it. I felt like, oh my God, this is just happening to me, something's wrong with me. And when I did write that blog post and start putting it out there, I started to really realize, oh my God, maybe other people have this, and maybe we're just not talking about it. And, for the past 10 years, I've been working on making this film, and the response every time, you start to realize, the more vulnerable you are, the more vulnerable everybody else around you is, which is what you kind of see happen with the characters and everybody in the film. But for me, it was just making it into a comedy film felt so important, because I could sit here and I could tell you all the statistics, 1 in 4 people, and that stuff's really important too, but if you can humanize the issue and see a character that you care about, then you're really gonna understand how this affects people.
Yeah, I really appreciate the story, especially because I have my own pelvic pain experience. A lot of things that resonated with me that were similar in my journey. I have endometriosis, and it took 15 years for me to be properly diagnosed. So there are a lot of moments in the film that were oh yeah, I've experienced that. And I think that that's probably a good amount of people here tonight, maybe either yourself or someone that has had similar experiences. So another thing that I really appreciated about the film was the relationship with the parents and sort of like how involved they were and how supportive they were. I know that not everybody has that type of support network, so could you tell us a little bit more about that inspiration for those characters?
My mom's in the audience, so shout out. She did not post a blog post without my permission. That did not happen. I want to make that clear. Yes, but no, my parents, with my mom and my dad, are super supportive. I'm very lucky and very grateful. You know, they really were there for me. And, you know, I know not everybody has that, but I think a lot of times in films, especially when we talk about sex, or we talk about anything dealing with down there, it's always like this, oh my God, the parents find out, and it's like, oh my God, gross, ew, we can't talk about it, taboo. And so I really want to flip the script on it because I think it's really important to have visibility and representation. And so I really wanted people to come in and see, oh my God, this is what a positive relationship can look like. And this is how you can be a supportive parent, how you can be a supportive partner. You know, even if you don't maybe have one of these chronic conditions or you're not dealing with it, you know, there's a very good chance someone in your life does, based on the statistics that we know. So it's just important to know that, you know, these are conversations that we can have around a family dinner table. It doesn't need to be taboo. We can normalize it, and these are just things that we can all talk about.
Absolutely. So that's a great segue to switch gears to some of the medical experts that we have here. So in the film, we saw that Dr. Silverstein, there was a scene where he shared it was a diagram, and it highlighted exactly where her vulva vestibule was, and he described it as a foyer leading to the dining room, which is really clever. For our panelists here, what is sort of like how you think about using terminology maybe that's not as broad as lady parts, but not quite as specific as the vulva vestibule? Like, Alicia, do you want to kick us off? Because I know you talk a lot in your content about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to meet people where they're at, because in this country we don't get a lot of education about our bodies, and so, you know, a lot of times people will come in and that's the initial, you know, words that they're comfortable with using, but I like to try to get them, you know, really in tune with the anatomy that we're talking about, because, you know, a lot of people don't even know that the vulva and the vagina are two different things, and, you know, we want to make sure that when we're having conversations about our bodies that they're accurate. You can still use a lot of like really fun metaphors to still make sure that people understand what's going on. I'm also a big fan of using, you know, diagrams, 3D models, different things like that. And, you know, we work through it with patients, and I work through it on my channel to, you know, make sure that it's not coming off in a way that feels intimidating. It's a way that gives you ownership over your body.
Totally agree. Love it. I think the idea of meeting people where they are, and first and foremost thinking about, right, like when someone comes into my space, my number one priority is that they feel safe, right? So connecting to their energy as they are, right? And maybe that includes asking like, well, what terms do you use? What feels appropriate for you, right? Like, how do you connect with this space in your body? But the other thing is that whenever I'm teaching more broadly, I always say, like, I freaking love anatomy, because anatomy doesn't lie to you, right? Like, it tells you where you go. It just, like, it's the coolest. And also, like, levator ani means lift your ass in Latin. It's incredible, right? Like, it's just the best. So, I think it can be really helpful to, yes, match the energy, but also think about anatomy as a portal to better understanding and owning your space, because it's yours, right? Like, I don't go home in your body, it's your body. So,
I echo my colleagues, and knowledge is power. And knowledge is power. And we always offer patients a mirror if they're ready to look, if they want to look. You'd be amazed how many people have never had that opportunity, people of all ages. And again, I think knowledge is really powerful and empowering.
So in the film we saw that Paige had a difficult time even really like understanding and explaining what was happening in her body, where the pain was, how to talk about that. So Cait, I know that as a chronic pain coach, that's probably something you deal with. Could you tell us a little bit about how you guide your patients to understand and speak about what's happening?
So fancy. So I think that when we're thinking about like, just how do we inhabit our bodies, right? Because something that I think about a lot is that dissociation is a really excellent tool when you don't want to be in your body, right? When you experience pain, dissociation is actually like a great strategy. And then it gets really tricky because, oh shit, we do have a body, right? Like, and we do want to support our bodies, and at a certain point, we want to be in it. And that can be really, really hard, that desire to want to inhabit our body, and then actually like the history of everyone has a different story, right? And I always feel really strongly that no one owes me their story, no one owes me anything, you don't owe anyone anything. And at the same time, the way that I think about it is, what avenues are we going to find for you? And this looks different for everyone. I can't stress this enough. There is no like step-by-step protocol. I wish it were that easy, but actually, really what I focus on is like, how can we create some senses of safety in your body? So maybe that's through movement, maybe it's through breath, maybe it's through screaming into a pillow, right? Like, you have options, and they do not have to look like chill. They can be really, really diverse. So that's kind of like our starting place, is like, oh shit, we have a body. And then the other thing that I think is really important is also figuring out, how can you feel good, right? Maybe not specifically in your pelvis, right? Just like, can we talk about hedonism and like owning your body and actually using that as a tool to have capacity, like to recognize that actually you have capacity for pleasure anywhere. Maybe it's your hands, maybe it's touching your face, maybe it's like whatever. It doesn't matter, it's going to be different for everyone. So that's where I start.
Want to take it? Hot potato?
So in the film, we got a glimpse into the world of pelvic floor PT through the use of dilators, which I heard a lot of laughter, so it seems like maybe there's some dilator users in the room. Kathy, could you walk us through what some other conditions, aside from the one that Paige demonstrated in the film, would benefit from having pelvic floor PT, and sort of how you evaluate that in your practice?
That's a great question, and everyone needs pelvic floor PT. Or pelvic floor OT. The pelvis is the grand central station of the body, and it is foundational to our well-being. So all pelvis owners should have pelvic floor services. I think we learned about vestibulodynia, pain in the vestibule, and that is a great start. You know, it's a great option to send people to pelvic floor therapy. I think anytime there's entry pain, or there's deeper pain, or there's pain with thrusting, you definitely want to get a pelvic floor therapist on board. Constipation is often a mechanical issue. And I started in primary care, and we do not learn about the pelvic floor and constipation. We just say, oh, just give them some Miralax. And I would say, absolutely not. Work with your pelvic floor therapist, because getting the mechanics of pooping right will really help you so much. Urinary frequency, urinary urgency, burning, leaking, incontinence of stool, those are all amazing times to go. I mean, they're not amazing, but they're, sorry, but you should get a pelvic floor therapist on board. Those of us in primary care, and now GYN, internal medicine, when your patients come in and they're like, oh, but I've got these recurrent UTI-like symptoms, but my culture is always negative. Or I have recurrent vaginitis, that's a big one. And my cultures are already always negative. And the issue is that most of the time your provider, what they don't know, because we never learned it in our training, is that when your pelvic floor muscles are tight, and I would venture to say probably a lot of you in the room already know this, they can irritate or compress the nerves that innervate the pelvic floor. You know, we all know that when you hit your elbow and you get that numbness and tingling in your elbow, that's a response from compressing your ulnar nerve. Well, when the nerves that innervate your pelvis get compressed or irritated, they can cause numbness and tingling, they can cause urinary urgency, frequency, and burning, they can cause increase in vaginal discharge, they can rashes and sweating, all kinds of things that look like infections when really it's the pelvic floor. And then I think low back pain, hip pain, SI joint pain, headaches, neck pain, jaw pain, shoulder pain. I think anything, everybody would benefit from pelvic floor therapy.
So we already touched on the fact that Paige had a really hard time finding a diagnosis. What are some of the things that you all would like OBGYNs and other medical providers to know? Do you want to
start with that one before I need to just one thing and then everyone.
I feel so strongly about this. So even in the movie, the word they used was vulvodynia. So vulva is the global, right? We look globally at the vulva. If someone were to sit down and spread their legs on the exam table, you're looking globally at the vulva. And in all kinds of medical practices, we use billing codes, ICD-10 codes. And I would venture to say that the three of us sitting here, the three clinicians, nothing we do has that billing code, because there is no billing code for pain in the vestibule. It doesn't exist. When I first started, I thought, oh, I must not be looking it up correctly. It doesn't exist. So that we have to get, and it's a systems. When the doctor in the movie said, oh, no one, there's no research. It's a systems problem. It's a education problem. It's a billing problem. It's the whole thing. So I had to start us off with that.
I think, if we're talking to OBGYNs and people working in kind of pelvic health globally, I just want to emphasize how important that first touch point is, because as we've kind of heard, there are people that wait years and years and years before they get a diagnosis. And some of that comes from the, taboo associated with talking about your lady parts. A lot of times these people are failed when they do finally get the courage to have that conversation. They're brushed off, they're told that things are normal when they're not. They're never given what that next step is. So my challenge to the, OBGYN, women's health, whatever community, is to know what kind of the triage is for where to start to help these people. Don't just leave them with, yeah, we can check in on that later. You need to have a plan. You need to be able to help support these people.
I think the other thing that I want to just add on top of that is that your language matters so many times, right? And I think all of us in this room, we can think about that one doctor's appointment, whether it's OBGYN or not, right? Where someone says something kind of flippant, and I think about this as a clinician, we are all people, we all have days where we haven't slept enough, whatever. People remember what you say, right? And if you're that first touch point and you say something off the cuff, yeah, this is kind of normal, I don't know, it's just it's a little bit more than usual, but you'll be fine, right? That's gonna live rent-free in someone's head for decades. That matters a lot.
It's my foot every time.
Just seconding what everybody said up here, and God, there's so much I want to say here. Where do we even begin? But I think like what you're seeing here, and I want to piggyback off what everyone was just saying, you know, a lot of times when someone goes to an OBGYN for one of these issues, it might be the only time they'll ever go. You know, if it's a negative experience, they might never come back. And, you know, I'm very lucky and privileged that one, I had the financial means and the supportive system at home, and just based on the way I look, I am a white woman going into the medical system. I have everything going for me in terms of privilege. And you got to watch in the movie how hard it was just for me to even get care. And I'm really pushy. So I had to go see like 20 different doctors before I could even find someone that you saw in the movie. Like, it really took me seriously and gave me diagnosis and really like helped me on a path forward. And so if you see someone like me who can't get help, like you have to imagine how bad this systematic problem really is. And I think that's always something really important to take away from that, is you're seeing one story and there's, I think the statistic is like 1 in 4 people with one in 4 people will have chronic vulvar pain at some point in their lives. I like to now say it's one-on-one, because I feel like every time I show this movie to someone, they come up to me and maybe it's not vulvar pain, maybe it's pelvic pain, maybe it's something else, but there's always something. And so I just feel like there's a million stories out there that still need to be told, and a lot of things we need to change.
Absolutely. All right, last question before we open it up to the audience. So a central theme in Paige's story is how her condition has impacted her sex life. A question for the team here: what are some ways to guide patients to still connect with their partner and find ways to be intimate if they're not able to have penetrative sex?
There's so many ways. Women experience, or I should say vagina owners experience pleasure in so many different ways. And probably penetrative activity, I think, is, if you look at the statistics, it's low down on the list. So having a great clitoral exam and making sure your clitoral hood is mobile so that you can have a clitoral orgasm. There's a great website called OMG Yes that is a website that's dedicated to the scientific study of women's sexual pleasure. It's women ages 18 into their 90s, and they, first of all, they say that pleasure begins between the ears. So who doesn't love that? And then they guide you through, there's a library, and they guide you through real women talking about, and with different techniques, talking about what makes them feel good. They demonstrate, and then they also have an interactive vulva and clitoris on the website. So I think that's really beautiful. If you're comfortable doing that, you have to find something that you're comfortable doing. A lot of people like erotica. They like to read erotica, and there's some really wonderful websites out there for that. Lori Brotto is a wonderful colleague who wrote a great book called Better Sex Through Mindfulness. And I think it's beautiful if mindfulness is something that's in your wheelhouse or you're curious. And she talks so much about connecting to your body and being in the moment. And the question that she asks us to ask ourselves is, what does it feel like to be connected to this person in this moment? And that can be doing a variety of different things, it's not just penetration. We learned from a sex therapist colleague of mine, she uses the triangle analogy, and we all think penetration is at the very top of the triangle. And she's like, it's not. Flip the triangle upside down, and what are the things that you do with that special person to create all of that connection, like taking a walk, holding hands, having a conversation, all of those things are the foundation of intimacy.
As I'm just listening and I'm thinking, I'm always struck by whenever I do like explicit sex coaching with folks, how many people cry when I say, like, let's actually just start with, when do you feel most in your body, right? Like, can we just focus on that? Can we focus on experiencing joy in your body? So I feel like I should be like, have a label slapped on, like, called like safety queen, right? Like, when do we feel like safe and also joyous in our bodies? And then once we get that, right, like kind of just building on what you said, Kathy, like, how do we experience like joy and connection interpersonally? And, you know, I thought this was really beautifully done in the movie, like, take that pressure off, because when that pressure is there, it creates a sense of threat. And when we have a sense of threat, like, our brain upregulates the amount of pain we perceive. So decreasing that level of threat and focusing rather on like joy, hedonism, connection, right? Intrapersonally and then interpersonally, I think is really amazing. And then building on like, okay, then we can get curious about like, okay, well, like, what do you actually like? Because a lot of people do not know. And so like starting to just begin from a place of like curiosity, kindness, and care, and being like, I don't know, let's figure it out, and kind of like make it a fun project.
Okay, you guys said all the things that I was gonna say. So, no, I mean, I think you guys both made really good points about, you know, kind of finding that safety in your body, finding the ways that we connect with people that are like completely outside of the bedroom, and then, you know, moving your way through kind of those levels of safety into, you know, what feels good and you know, what is going to, like you said, create joy. I really like that descriptor. Sorry, I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, do it.
Oh, yeah, well, obviously I'm not a medical professional, but I like to think I'm one after all this time. But no, I think, and basically I think, you know, intimacy is whatever you make it, and I think I agree with that, like taking the pressure off of it. I think for so long it was like, you know, I think when she's like staring at the dilator, it's like this moment of like, oh my God, I've been doing like penis and vagina, that's the only way to do it, and it's penetration, and then you kind of have that moment where you're like, wait a minute, like, it's about me, and it's about like what I like and my pleasure, and I don't think until that moment she even like questioned it, and I know I didn't for a very long time, and it took me a very long time to kind of even like start that journey myself, and I feel like I'm forever gonna be on it, and yeah, intimacy is what you make it.
All right, we're gonna open it up to the audience for questions.
Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'll bring the mic to you. The mic might not be able to reach if you can come to the audience.
Hello. Hi. I love the movie. I cried. Thank you for being here. I really loved the cast, and I was curious, just like any stories you have about casting. It was just such a great group of people.
As you saw with this movie, it took a whole village to make this movie. Our cast and crew was incredible, and none of this would have happened if it was not for the whole team behind it. Our cast, so Valentina, who plays Paige, and she's amazing. She actually knew the director. They did a short film together, and that's how we kind of got to know Valentina. And we actually did an open casting call. It really truly was, and it was like 2021, so we were on Zoom because it was COVID time, so we did all of it through Zoom casting, which was crazy. But we found like Amy, Peter, Lars, like all the people. It just kind of, once we started like having them read, and once we started having them do their things, like it just really all molded together. And like seriously on set, like it felt like they were a family. Like it was incredible. And the actors are amazing. Like that scene you see with the dad about the Velveteen Rabbit. So it was always supposed to be a scene where they talk about the Velveteen Rabbit, and he relates it to like, you know, watching her become, and you know, he talks about losing his job, and you know, but it was a little bit more bare bones. And Peter, who plays the father, came to me and the director Nancy and was like, 5 minutes before we're about to start, he's like, can I do something? And we're like, yeah, okay. And he just comes at us with this whole story about the bald spot spray in the corner, and I was just like weeping in the corner. I was not expecting that. So yeah, we got, and like all the actors, like all their ad-libs, all the stuff they like brought to it that I didn't even know, every time I watched I noticed something different that one of them did, and it's just, we're so lucky. They were incredible. Oh, yeah, never mind, to the audience. Any other questions? Yeah.
Could you come to me and maybe or you could be loud, it's okay.
Yeah, be loud.
Be loud.
I can be really loud.
Okay.
So I really love the movie. I'm going through a divorce myself. Like, I was like sexless for so long. So like, this actually really helps me. And my friend dragged me here. I didn't know what I was getting into. So wanted to know. So if I like were educated when I was like a child, like a teenager, like I don't know, a lot of women here struggled for years and years and didn't have answers, right? Like they reach like such an older age to realize, okay, like this is not right. But what do we do with the younger girls? Like, what if they just know this when they're 15 and realize it sooner than later and go get help or talk to their mom or something?
Obviously this one, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable as well. Thank you for coming out here. I think like seeing this movie is like a great example of it. It's like sometimes it just takes somebody else to like say something, and someone else is like, oh, okay, maybe I feel okay now, like open to say something. I always say like, I wish I watched this movie at 13. It would have changed the course of my entire life. And instead I just went years and years and years without knowing. And I always think about too some of the early providers I saw, who were like, well, you put a speculum in, it really hurts, but women are supposed to have pain, and again, yeah, that one phrase can really stick with you. And I just think like, to anyone who's ever having a conversation, like it can be okay to talk about it. Just because of where it's located in your body doesn't mean we can't talk about it and we can't normalize it, and I'm really wishing that like, when you have the sex conversation, like part of it should be that like pain is not normal. And if you are in pain, then we need to talk about it and we need to figure it out. And I wish that was just like a normal conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like your, health class, or when they're, first telling little, girls that they're going to get a period. Like, if you had that little touch point of information of like, hey, a tampon shouldn't be painful, let that be the first nugget that sits in their brain, so that this isn't something where they think that they're like, have to like hold this in or think that something is like wrong with them. You can say like, hey, if this is happening, you should talk to an adult about it, right? And I think that you could extrapolate this in a lot of ways. Like, I think that's a lot of the reason that I started making the content that I do online, is because there are so many people who still don't get this education about their bodies. They don't see these things reflected in a positive way. They see, videos of women after childbirth being like, oh, I peed my pants, haha, but never in a way that like is solution oriented, and never in a way that makes them feel like they're a part of a community that can, still experience like these like joys in their life without having to like sacrifice the way that they're exercising or the way that they're having sex or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always joke that like I want to write a book for like 5th graders, right? Because no one pulls you into health class, to your point. Like no one pulls you in. But the other thing I think about also just as a parent is how like this is an amazing opportunity if you are a parent to like use parenting as a radical act of change, right? My poor children. God, I love them. Right? But like we do have that opportunity. And yeah, I think it goes back to education. So whether you're getting that education online in whatever capacity or via a book or in your health class, like I think we just need to destigmatize as much as possible. And also just like, anatomy is great. Like we learn about, I have been like legitimately thinking about like writing a book for 5th graders. Like we learn about like our different muscles and like our biceps, and like there is nothing weird about learning about the muscles in your pelvis. So.
And I think my approach is I have a lovely pelvic floor PT colleague, and she and I co-founded the Institute for Pelvic Health because where we see and identified a gap was in clinician education. When I first met her, she would say to me, do nurse practitioners and doctors really not know any of this stuff? And I said, oh no. Because you realize, and so I see it very much as a gap in clinician training. And if you go to your provider, they don't know. Like, we've never been taught. Like, you have to go and figure it out later. And so that's where we saw a real need. So we have a pelvic health course that clinicians can take, so that because we want the first person, the first provider that does a pelvic exam to be able to examine the vulva, know what the vestibule is, know that the clitoris has a hood and moves, and know that you have pelvic floor muscles like any other muscle in your body, and they can become dysfunctional, they can become tight, and they can become like a frozen shoulder. And we, not a nurse practitioner, midwifery, PA, and MD, we just don't learn that. So that's where we see a major, major gap.
I saw a couple hands in the back. Yeah, if you can kind of make your way closer.
That's really simple. It looks like thank you for making the movie and having this panel discussion. It looks like you're recording it. Is this something we would be able to have access to at some point?
Yeah, if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at ladyparts_film. We also have a YouTube channel, Lady Parts Film. Yeah, follow us there. I'll probably post something about it and follow all these lovely people on stage too. But yeah, absolutely. And also there's Tight Lip, which I know Emery's already mentioned, but they have a Boston chapter right here that's actually like fighting to change OBGYN residency education right now. Right now the curriculum does not include anything about chronic vulvovaginal pain. It doesn't even mention the words vulvar pain, which is not shocking when you see how many doctors a lot of us have to go to. So, yeah, make sure to follow both pages.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bonnie, congratulations, your movie was terrific. I think my question is more for the therapists. First, I want to say, having that, I don't remember what it's called, vestibulectomy, sounds terribly painful just thinking about it. And so I'm kind of wondering how one determines if they need the surgery, or if most people, or all people, can see improvement, complete improvement hopefully, with just therapy.
So that's a great question, and I think you always want to start, again, the foundation is the pelvic floor therapy, without question, with or without surgery, especially you need it after surgery if you're having surgery. I'm sure Bonnie can speak to that. Where I see, again, the pelvic floor therapy is the foundation, and then where someone like me comes in to help, and with the hope that maybe we don't have to progress to surgery, is adding in medical support. And what that looks like is, for example, prescribing local hormone therapy. So everyone probably has heard about vaginal estrogen. It's having a bit of a moment right now. The thing is, the vestibule has both estrogen and testosterone receptors on it, or androgen receptors. So you need to treat the vestibule appropriately, and you need to treat it with estradiol and testosterone. And that's often missed. Then you also need to, we have different buckets of vestibulodynia. We have hormonally driven, so the local hormone cream would be helpful for that. We have neuroproliferative, and I believe that's the kind that you had. And so that we can treat locally or topically with neuropathic medications and see if that will help. And then we also have inflammatory vestibulodynia, and we have congenital vestibulodynia. So there's 4 buckets, and so that's where a nurse practitioner, a doctor, someone that's licensed to prescribe, can be an incredible partner with the PT or the OT to really give your patient interdisciplinary care.
So sad.
That was incredible. And I just want to say too, obviously we had to condense this to 100 minutes. So like, I know it seems like, oh, first appointment surgery, like in real life, like we actually spent like 2 years, we tried hormone creams, we tried a bunch of stuff, and the surgery really was a last resort option just because it had gotten so bad over the years and years of just lack of intervention.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I'm ashamed to say that as a man I was completely ignorant of the pain that women endure in these situations. What can men do to be more supportive of women in this?
Okay. No, thank you for saying that, and thank you for being here and seeing the movie. That's a huge first step, because the amount of people that see the movie, like, see it in like lady parts, I'm not gonna even go see it. And I'm like, okay, but that's like 50% of the population. Like, what do you mean? And so, I think, you know, something you see here and that we always talk about is like, if you normalize it around you and your family and your friends, then it's gonna start to become normal around the other people, and we need you to be an ally just as much as the other, like, you know, female presence in our life, you know. And a lot of people, what really irks me is they're always like, wow, the dad's so supportive, and I was like, okay, so mom's just supportive, and that's just expected. And it's like, wow, the dad gets extra credit because he was just as supportive, and that's fantastic. I'm glad he is, but I think it's really important to know that, like, caring about, you know, somebody in your life, regardless of where the pain is in their body, like, treating them as a human being and seeing them as a human being is like the biggest thing you can do. And I know, you know, I'm very lucky to have the father I do, and that he, you know, treated me like that. And yeah, the amount of people that come up to him after screen like, wow, I can't believe you were like that. And I'm like, you mean Karen? So, yeah, but thank you for asking that. I think it's huge.
Yeah, I think too, you know, if you have a loved one who is going through this, going to the appointments with them can be so impactful. I mean, so often you see people, you know, scared, not knowing what's going to happen, sitting in waiting rooms alone, going to these appointments alone. Having a support person, especially that being somebody that you know, love and trust and care about, can make a huge difference. And even also just being another set of ears for the really complex medical stuff that is probably coming at them.
Yeah, so the other thing I think about is like building ease and pleasure around the things that feel hard. So like I think about something called like a dopamine sandwich. Dopamine is very powerful, right? So like if we have a hard task, whether it's going to an appointment or inserting a dilator or a shot or whatever, right? Something delightful before, right? That like you as a male support person can offer and just like make it happen, right? Make it happen before, make it happen after. The other thing is that a lot of this stuff is out of network. A lot of it is really expensive. And I think, you know, there is, I know for me personally, when my partner is just like, yeah, it's totally, like whatever you need, right? Like not like questioning. I mean, of course, right, like financial constraints are real, right? And also at the same time, if that's available to you, to just like trust that like, you need this care, you sought this provider, you've done this homework, just show up for it, right? I think can be really, really big.
Anne-Marie, do we have time for another question?
Yeah.
We started late, so.
Well, you know what? We'll do one more question. I want to read the raffle after that, so please don't leave as soon as, you know, the last question is. And then I know myself, people from Tight Lips, people from Planned Parenthood will all be outside. So please make sure to like come. We can answer questions. We can talk with you, give you resources, everything like that. You know, we're not just up and out of here, but I think we do have to clear like the theater area.
Also, a quick plug, Tight Lip is having an event on April 26th. So if you want to ask more questions, be in community, share your story, we'll have opportunities then.
I
thanks. I wanted to see how much I loved the movie, and then I knew I wanted to see it a while ago, and I had forgotten what it was about, and I thought it was going to be a documentary when we came in tonight. So this was so much more fun. Sorry to say that. But the whole ICD thing is like, and not insured, out of network is really huge. And there's sort of like a chicken and egg thing maybe, I don't know, like with educating clinicians, and then it gets an ICD code, or maybe it's the other way around, and like how does that happen? And you know, because coverage is huge no matter what kind of care you're getting, and there's no like diagnosis, I guess, so that's kind of huge. So I just sort of wanted to ask how that happens, and just
I'm not a doctor, I'll let them go.
So I think that's a tension that certainly patients live with, and the providers who take care of them live with as well. And I think this is a beautiful example of trying to create that change. The film's incredible, self-funded, and we're all living with that tension. And you know, following Alicia with her huge social media following, she's doing a tremendous public service. You with your work are doing the same with our Institute for Pelvic Health. So we're all, you know, it's a grassroots effort, and it's going to take everybody.
I also want to specifically shout out Jocelyn Fitzgerald. She's a urogynecologist who is actually doing a lot of work towards reimbursement and coding in the like women's health and GYN spaces. So there are certainly big movements, especially within like university hospital systems, to try to get some of this language changed so that there's less disconnect happening.
I can say I'm getting another surgery in June, and I mean, what you saw in the surgery, it happened 10 years ago, that was 2016, and now, I mean, I'm still having to go to San Diego to do it, but I'm getting it, it's now going to be considered an in-network charge.
Yes.
So, thank you, I know, lots of work. But it's, you know, because I'm finally finding providers that are like trying to do the work to go into the hospital system, teaching hospitals, and again, I don't understand insurance codes, maybe like, you know, I'm just a person at the end of the day, and patient, but it was really exciting to think like, okay, maybe down the road people aren't going to have to deal with this, and so, yeah. Oh yeah, real quick, so if you came in, you got a friendship bracelet. I would pull those out, please. If you don't know what the kiwi is, it's an